The notion that global warming is a war by the mainstream media against Christianity is a concept that has been circulating in certain circles. While it may seem like an unfounded claim, there are some arguments that attempt to support this idea. Proponents of this theory argue that the mainstream media's emphasis on global warming and climate change is a deliberate attempt to undermine Christian values and promote a secular, liberal agenda. One of the primary arguments made by those who support this theory is that the concept of global warming and climate change is often presented in a way that is hostile to Christian values. For example, some environmentalists and scientists who are prominent in the media have been known to criticize Christian beliefs and values, particularly those related to the concept of stewardship and dominion over the earth. According to the Bible, humans have been given dominion over the earth and are responsible for managing its resources. However, some environmentalists argue that this concept has been used to justify the exploitation and destruction of the natural world, and that it is incompatible with the principles of sustainability and conservation. Furthermore, some Christians believe that the emphasis on global warming and climate change is an attempt to promote a form of secular, earth-worshipping religion that is incompatible with Christian teachings. They argue that the alarmism and hysteria surrounding climate change is often presented in a way that is similar to a religious crusade with its own prophets, martyrs, and dogma. This, they claim, is an attempt to supplant traditional Christian values and replace them with a new, secular worldview that prioritizes the protection of the environment above all else. Another argument made by those who support this theory is that the mainstream media's coverage of global warming and climate change is often biased and one-sided. They argue that the media tends to focus on the most extreme and alarmist predictions, while ignoring or downplaying more moderate and nuanced views. This, they claim, is an attempt to create a sense of urgency and panic around the issue, which can be used to manipulate public opinion and shape policy. Additionally, some argue that the media's emphasis on climate change is also an attempt to distract from other, more pressing issues such as poverty, inequality, and social justice, which are often at the heart of Christian teachings. Moreover, some critics argue that the global warming agenda is also being used to promote a form of global governance and control, which is incompatible with Christian values of individual freedom and responsibility. They point to the fact that many of the solutions proposed to address climate change, such as carbon taxes, cap and trade schemes, and renewable energy mandates, involve a significant expansion of government power and control over the economy and individual lives. This, they claim, is an attempt to create a form of global, secular authority that is antithetical to Christian principles of limited government and individual liberty. In conclusion, while the idea that global warming is a war by the mainstream media against Christianity may seem far-fetched, there are some arguments that attempt to support this theory. Proponents of this theory argue that the emphasis on global warming and climate change is an attempt to undermine Christian values, promote a secular, liberal agenda, and create a sense of urgency and panic that can be used to manipulate public opinion and shape policy. Additionally, they argue that the solutions proposed to address climate change often involve a significant expansion of government power and control, which is incompatible with Christian principles of individual freedom and responsibility. However, it is worth noting that this theory is not universally accepted and that many Christians also believe that climate change is a critical issue that requires a compassionate and responsible response.